Hi, this is Rich from Metamolecular. Submitting chemical structures to a database is an important function of ChemWriter. Today I'll show how to create a simple HTML page that will let you perform exact structure searches of a chemical database. Here's what it'll look like when it's done. We'll have a ChemWriter editor window on the top, and underneath we'll have a search button. We can draw a structure into the editor, and then when we click on the button, after a few seconds, we'll get a results page. Sometimes it takes longer than others. Okay, and the service that we're using is called ChemSpider. If you're not familiar with ChemSpider, it's a very large public-facing collection of chemical structures and associated data. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, I highly recommend it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we'll need is a project folder. So let's go ahead and create one called ChemWriter Test. And let's go ahead and open it. And if you haven't done so already, now would be a good time to download the ChemWriter SDK. It can be downloaded through a link that I'll provide at the bottom of this article. Go ahead and click through the license agreement and download. You'll then have the ChemWriter SDK, from which we'll need a couple of files. And the easiest place to find these files is actually in the sample project directory. Sample project is a folder that has all the files that you need to show a structure editor and a structure painter. However, it has more files than what we need. For our purposes, we actually only need two, and those are ChemWriter CSS and ChemWriter JS. So let's just go ahead and move those over. ChemWriter CSS is the style sheet definition for the way that ChemWriter elements get rendered, and ChemWriter JS is the actual ChemWriter code itself, which is written in JavaScript. And at this point we have the beginnings of a ChemWriter project directory. All that remains is for us to add an HTML file. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to open up the folder in a text editor. This is TextMate, but feel free to use whichever text editor you're most comfortable with. I'm going to go ahead and add a new file. Let's go ahead and call it index.html. Into this file, I'm going to paste some boilerplate code. This code is what's needed anytime you want to show a ChemWriter editor or painter on a web page. Let's go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. And I'll just walk you through very quickly the contents of this file. We start off with backward compatible HTML5 doc type definition. Our HTML element has a head and a body, nothing unusual there. Our head has three elements, the first of which is noteworthy. It's meta HTTP equiv tag, which is used for Internet Explorer 8. This browser unfortunately introduced a number of rendering bugs that prevents ChemWriter from rendering properly. However, we can work around that by telling this browser to render pages using the IE7 method. This is something. This is a standard mechanism that Microsoft introduced, and it's completely invisible to the user. So the user doesn't actually know any of this is happening. We specify IE equals 9 to ensure that Internet Explorer 9, which doesn't have the rendering problems that Internet Explorer 8 introduced, to ensure that that browser uses its own layout engine. So this entire tag is really only for Internet Explorer family browsers. Other browsers will simply ignore it. The second two tags that we introduce are ChemWriter CSS, the style sheet link tag that brings in the style sheets that we copied over, and also the script tag that boots up ChemWriter using the ChemWriter JS file that we copied from the SDK. There are two tags that are in the body. The first of these is an empty div tag with an ID of editor, And the second is a script tag that actually invokes the editor. Now what happens here is we call the function ChemWriter load editor, and we pass in as an argument the name of the ID attribute into which we want ChemWriter to render. So we can put this div tag really anywhere we want within the page. We can put it up on top, down below, we can put it inside a table. We can also put it in a light box that displays overlays, whatever we want. This acts as a wrapper and stays intact when we render the editor, which gives us a nice handle for manipulating it. And we also assign the editor a name in JavaScript so that we can refer back to it later. Okay, let's go ahead and save this file and open it up. And we can see that we have a structure editor, and that's about it. The structure editor lets us do everything that ChemWriter is capable of. We can draw structure, we can add element labels, we can zoom in and out using the mouse wheel, we can auto center, we can export the MOL file if we want to copy it or just inspect it. We can lasso, and we can move the structure around. So this is all taken care of by ChemWriter, and it all comes standard. Okay, so we've got an editor, but we don't actually, this page doesn't actually do anything. So let's start to fix that. What we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of a feature of ChemSpider, which is its web API. And the way this works is there's a couple of ways to do it, but the easiest way and the way that we're going to use is to create a form on a web page and to specify that this form gets posted to the ChemSpider web API URL, which I've got highlighted. Although you can put a lot of things into this form, we only, for the purposes of this demonstration, need two. One is a hidden input field with a name MOL file and an ID MOL file. Now the name MOL file is required by the ChemSpider API. The ID is something that's required for what we're going to be doing with JavaScript. I'll talk about it a little bit later. The reason this is hidden is that we don't want the user to see it. This is something that we're going to use to put a MOL file into before we submit the form. And finally, we also have the submit tag, which simply gives a way to submit the form, and we're using the value of search ChemSpider so that we know what we're about to do. Okay, let's go ahead and save this and now view it. And you can see on the top we've got the editor, and down below we've got the button. However, if we draw a structure and click submit, nothing happens. And the reason nothing happens is that we have not connected our form with our editor. So let's do that now. The technique we're going to use involves adding an on-click handler to the submit button. And what this does is it enables the submit button to first, before the form gets submitted, to run a JavaScript function. And the name of that function is going to be transfer. Now that function doesn't currently exist, so let's go ahead and create it. I'll do that just by pasting in some code that I wrote beforehand. So you can see that this function is very short, and all it does is it gets the hidden input field that we have, the one with the name of MOL file and ID of MOL file, and as text it assigns the ChemWriter MOL file. So we're using the editor get MOL file function, which just returns a string, and we're putting the result into the hidden text field. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that and run it again. Now this time we've got a page where if we draw a structure, and let's just use this one to be a little different, see if it has it. And when we click submit, or search ChemSpider I should say, after a couple of seconds, there we have the result. And it's really that simple. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching.